Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to wrap up the series on the JTR Captivator subwoofers. We've gone through each individual subwoofer from the sealed, double sealed, ported, the massive ported, the different configurations. This video I want to kind of wrap up and really just provide some recommendations. One of the biggest questions I always get asked on my channel is, Michael, what should I buy? Which one should I buy? I'm looking at this or this or this or this. So I just want to take you through kind of my thought process of where I see each one of these, what would be my recommendation, and we'll just start from the sealed and kind of work our way up. So before we jump into each individual one, let me just kind of talk sealed versus ported and give you kind of a big picture. Typically, sealed enclosures are going to provide a smaller form factor, and that's visual. So you can see sealed here. Here's the ported equivalent. And so sealed is going to offer you a smaller form factor. It's also going to, in my opinion, provides a cleaner, tighter sound. But the other thing that it's going to do is you're going to get a little bit less output. And so the trade-off there is if you want the most output, if you're just looking for, man, I just want to feel it, I want my whole body to be shaking, I want the house to be falling apart, I would recommend the ported. If you want something that's more controlled, still has a very visceral, like I'm getting huge, physical impact in my room with two of these, but it's still different than a ported. To me, ported is very violent. It's very aggressive. And so sometimes when you're thinking through in your system, should I go sealed or ported? Maybe think through those questions. Do I want a real aggressive, violent, bass? Do I want a very accurate, very controlled, but still tactile bass? That'll help you decide sealed or ported. The other question, how much space do you have? If you don't have a whole lot of space, your option, like in my setup, I needed to go with these for the most part. I could have went with a ported here, but I decided I wanted two 18s on each side, so that's four 18s in my room, and I really had zero way of putting a monster 4000 ULF Captivator in my room. And so thinking through that, so that's kind of sealed versus ported. I've even got a dedicated video on sealed versus ported on my channel, so I'll link it down in the description if you're interested in that. So now let's walk through kind of applications. So again, the RS1 is the most popular sub, and I think the biggest reason, number one, is the cost, okay? But number two, the form factor. This thing is relative, now it's an 18-inch driver, but as you can see, we're only a couple inches wider, a couple inches taller, and about the same depth here. So this can fit in a lot of applications a lot more easily. Living rooms, theater rooms, still going to get a lot of output. If you wanted more output, and if you've got the space, most of us have the ability our restriction is going to be the floor space. And so for the most part, these are almost identical. I mean, we're talking a 1/16 of an inch difference between the RS2 and the RS1. So the floor space, it takes up the same amount, but do you have the height? So again, depends on your situation. If you don't have the height, if you don't have the budget, then go with a single RS1. Now I recommend always, if you can at all possible, at least go with two subwoofers. Having multiple subwoofers in your room is going to have several benefits. Number one, of course, you're going to get more output. Number two, you're going to be able to obtain the same output, but not having to run your amp as hard. So think about it this way. If I have a single RS1 and it's cranking, well, if I had two RS1s, they don't have to crank as much, okay? So that's just a thought there. It's going to run more efficient, it's going to run cleaner, it's going to sound better. These still have massive amounts of headroom and output, but you get the idea there. Two is a lot easier. If you and I were to carry this big heavy speaker or this, two of us is going to be able to move this around a lot easier than one person. So you're distributing that load. So that's the thought there. So if you want more output, go with the RS2. Now, one other benefit with the RS2 though, over two RS1s is the cost factor. So this is cheaper than buying two RS1s. Again, if you're only going to go with one subwoofer, if you can rock this, that'd be awesome. If you don't have the height, then of course you're back down to this. Now in terms of output, anytime that you double the drivers and then you double the amplification, this has 2400 watts amplification, this has 4000, so it's almost double. Basically, you're going to gain 6 dB in volume. So if you compare the RS1 to the RS2, in general, the RS2 is going to play 6 decibels louder than a single RS1. Now, of course, if you have two of these, like I recommend, if you have two of these, so an RS1 and an RS1, and then you do an RS2 and an RS2 and compare those, you'll get 12 dB more output with dual RS2s as opposed to dual RS1s. So again, part of this hobby is figuring out how much we need. And of course, nothing in this hobby is really a need. It's how much do we want. Some people want a very chill, just they want the lower end filled in, but they don't want it crazy shaking their room. Man, 2 of these or 4 of these in your room to get even distribution of bass would be amazing. If you're looking for high output, man, put 2 of these in your room or 4 of them in your room, which would be massive. You see where I'm going there. So just the more you're desiring, and of course the bigger your room is going to determine, how many of these you need. Sometimes what I recommend doing, if you know you got a big room, like this room's pretty big, I would 100% recommend going with 2 RS2s versus 2 RS1s. Now, again, you could go with 4 RS1s, put 1 in each of the corners. Going to give you the same output for the most part, give you better seat-to-seat response than just 2 subwoofers. But in a bigger room, you're going to need more subwoofers. And so if you bought 2 of them, let's say down the road, you're like, man, I just wish I had more output than these can provide. You can always add 2 more, or maybe add some smaller RS1s just to fill in some of that output and provide a little bit more than what you're getting just with 2 of them. But I've yet to long for more in my 13 foot by 19 foot with 10 foot ceilings than what 2 RS2s provide in my room. And so these are phenomenal. Absolutely love them. These are about 110 pounds a piece. These are about 220 a piece. So they definitely are quite heavy to move around. If you're going for really low end extension, like you want the lowest frequency you can possibly get in your room, you're going to need to lean towards sealed. The reason is every subwoofer that's ported has a port tune. And so when Jeff builds these subwoofers, there's a certain frequency he's going for. And I believe these are ported at 10 hertz, if I'm correct. And so once it starts to get to that port tune and it hits that port tune, the frequency response pretty much just starts to drop immediately. Like it just boom. So you're basically limited to whatever that port tune is. However, with sealed subwoofers, what happens is at a certain frequency, it starts to roll off. And so instead of doing this steep drop off, it basically just has a smooth curve. And so you start losing output the lower the frequency, but you're still being able to hit relatively high SPL at those lower frequencies. So in my case, I've measured my RS2s down to 5 hertz in my room with significant output. If I had an equivalent ported, it may be 10 hertz and it's just going to drop like a rock. And so I'm going to lose a little bit of output, a little bit of extension, lower end extension with ported. I'll gain some of that with sealed. So just something to consider, again, when you're deciding. So now let's shift over to the ported subwoofers. So these are the Captivator 2400 here, and then we've got the big 4000 ULF. So the first thing you need to decide is how much space do I have available in my room? So if your room is small, man, if you put 2 of these even in a good sized room, Matt has 2 of these in a room that's a little bit bigger than this, and it shakes that. Now, granted, this is on concrete in this room. He's on a second floor, and so that is a kind of like a suspended ceiling. It's on wood, and so you're getting some additional tactile response. You'll be able to feel that more, because the bass traveling from these is integrating with that floor is vibrating, and then that is shaking the chairs and the theater seating, so you're feeling that more in that room. But these have tremendous output, phenomenal sub. Again, you've got a 18-inch sub, 2400 watt amplifier, so plenty of output, plenty of power, lots of low end extension. But maybe you don't have the space for a massive subwoofer like a 4000 ULF. So that's where this guy's going to come in. This is going to be aggressive. It's going to be violent. You're going to feel it. It's going to be super strong. How many of these you need just depends on how much space you have, and as well, how big is your room. So on to the last one. If you just want the most output, crazy low end extension, but you have plenty of space, now you're talking the JTR Captivator 4000 ULF. And then, as I shared with you in the previous video, the only difference for the most part between the 4 Captivator is just the size and the dimensions. Some of them are made to be short and skinny, but they're really wide. Others are wide and tall, but narrow. Some of them are really tall, and so then they're less, they're narrow on the width and the depth. And so it really just depends on what your space, what fits best in your space. Don't worry about output. You don't have to compare those. You're looking at it aesthetically. How does it look? And where will it best fit? So when it comes to the JTR Captivator subwoofers, honestly, I don't think there's a bad subwoofer in the bunch, and I truly mean that. I've heard the RS1s in systems. I've owned the RS2s in mine. Matt has the 2400s in his. I've got a bunch of people that I know that have various amounts, and some have insane amounts of 4000 ULFs in all the different form factors. And I've yet to walk away in any of those rooms and go, man, that bass was lacking. Like, it's crazy. It just depends on, you have to decide, number one, of course, your budget. How much money do you have to work with? Number two, what are your goals? Are you looking for tight and accurate? Then look at the sealed. Then it's just a matter of how much space do you have and how much bass do you want in your room. If you're wanting more of that violent, again, how much space, how much budget, and just how much impact do you want. So 2400s are going to pressurize the room. Those 4000 ULFs, they're going to destroy your room. And I'm not kidding. It's violent. It's aggressive. It's the wildest subwoofers I've experienced. So there's a lot of different things to think through when you're building out your room. But again, figure out sealed or ported. Figure out what space do you have. If you can go with 2, great. If you can go with 4, even better, because it's going to allow you, after you calibrate, to get a smoother bass response between each one of your seating positions. And the more seating positions you have in your room, the more subwoofers you're going to need if you're concerned about getting everybody a good experience. If you're just concerned about the primary listening position, grab 2, you should be pretty good. You can always add a smaller sub in the back corners to be able to fill in some of those nulls, because you don't need more output most of the time. Most of the time, adding additional subwoofers isn't about, man, I need more bass. It's, I want smoother bass in my room, and I want better seat-to-seat bass response. I know it's overwhelming sometimes when you're trying to decide what's best for your situation. So I'm hoping that this series has given you some things to think about, and it provides just a bigger picture of what each one of these subwoofers can do, what they're capable of, and then which one would be a best fit depending on your circumstance. Now, if you're interested in purchasing any of the JTR Captivators, we've got most of these in stock, ready to ship here at Obsessed Home Theater headquarters. So you can order those directly from the website, obsessedhometheater.com. And if you got any questions, either drop us an email on the website, or you can email me directly at youthman@obsessedhometheater.com. I'll be happy to help you out. Well, guys, I hope you found this video helpful. I'll leave the playlist right here if you want to see the whole playlist or the other videos that we did on each individual subwoofer. Check that out. Hope you have an incredible week. God bless. I'll catch you in the next video.